Hello, my name is Joey Dix and I'm the Engagement Officer, Cape York Natural Resource Management. Today I'm talking with Andrew Ford to learn more about littoral rainforests on Cape York. So welcome, Andrew. First off, would you like to tell us about your job and how you came to work with littoral rainforests?
Yeah, sure. G'day, Joey. How do I get involved in littoral rainforest? I was really lucky to be involved in a project with CSIRO about 5-6 years ago, where we were making an initial assessment of the quality of littoral rainforest and where it is in the wet tropics in particular. So we were more interested at that time in an area between about Rolling Stone and Cooktown.
So what is littoral rainforests and coastal vine thickets, and where do they occur?
Littoral rainforest and coastal vine thickets are a vegetation type that occurs under the processes of a maritime influence. So at its purest form, littoral rainforest or a coastal vine thicket is a vegetation type that is of rainforest origin. So if you're inside it, it would look like a rainforest, lots of stems close together. If you look up, there's not a lot of sunlight getting through, so there's a fairly closed canopy. But more importantly, it's what the substrate is and what the influence on the formation in particular is. And as I mentioned, the purest form of littoral rainforest occurs on just above the high tide mark on sand dunes, where the sand has actually come from the ocean. And so we often think about, is it littoral rainforest or isn't it littoral rainforest by, is the impact of the formation, the structure and the plants inside the rainforest, is it derived from the ocean or is it more derived from the land? There's actually several different types of littoral rainforest recognised within Australia. So there's actually littoral rainforest occurs all the way from Victoria, believe it or not, all the way to Princess Charlotte Bay, and within that area, it's been federally recognised as a critically endangered ecosystem.
Yeah, right. So for yourself there, Andrew, what do you got? Some sort of little secret tips to the trade, that help you indicate or find littoral rainforest?
The first thing I always do is basically look at the substrate or the soil or the rock, and basically ask the question, is it sand, yes or no? What does the sand kind of look like? Has it got a lot of humus or organic matter in it, or does it have none? That kind of basic start. So if you see sand, all of a sudden you kind of think, okay, we're in the right place. Okay, then look around you. Does it look like rainforest? So are there trees that look like rainforest trees? Is there more or less a closed canopy above you so that the sunlight doesn't really penetrate all the way to the ground everywhere like a non-rainforest community? And if you're answering yes again, then for each particular area for argument's sake, Queensland, there's a suite of species which are often indicator species for the presence of littoral rainforest. And so when you have a look around, what species are present actually becomes very important in deciding if something is littoral rainforest or not. Basically, as long as it looks like a rainforest formation and as long as the species in there are of rainforest origin dominantly, then you're kind of ticking another box. The last question you would ask yourself is, okay, is the rainforest formation and the vegetation here a result of the influence of the ocean? Is it a maritime derived vegetation, or is it not? And because it's on sand and because it's a more or less closed canopy of rainforest species that are on the indicator list, then your answer would be yes, it is littoral rainforest.
So why is it littoral rainforest class is critically endangered in national legislation?
It's recognised as critically endangered, Joey, simply because it's very much been reduced in extent and quality of vegetation, and not so much in the wet tropics area in the southern Cape York area, but more so further south where everyone talks about, like, for example, the Gold Coast beaches the Sunshine Coast beaches, northern New South Wales beaches, beaches around Sydney. And so most of those places used to have extensive areas of what we now class as littoral rainforest on them, which are now growing houses, skyscrapers, other building infrastructure. So anywhere along the coast where it's sandy was originally would have had some form of littoral rainforest on it somewhere. So being classed as critically endangered is by and large a reflection on the amount of the vegetation that's been cleared in the past, and recognition that it's a community under threat today. So even today it's under severe threat from infrastructure works, four-wheel driving on beaches. So to get to the beach, you got to go usually from another access point, and often an access point will cut through a section of littoral rainforest. So infrastructure, building developments, weeds are a big thing for impacting as a threat. For us up here, it's mostly lantana. Believe it or not, pond apple is a potential weed threat. Pigs are a threat. Lots of different things, and one of the biggest ones, which we experienced in 2011 and 2006, were severe tropical cyclones. So when they crossed the coast in particular areas, so like Larry crossed in the Cowley Beach area, and further, and so the area around Cowley Beach, and then all the way down to near Cardwell, a lot of the littoral rainforest there was actually wiped out. So it's at the front line of normally being threatened by nature, so to speak, but it's also threatened from the other side, from human activities and infrastructure mostly. And because it's so contained today and it doesn't move, ebb and flow freely between other vegetation types, then it's kind of very restricted as to where it can recolonize or grow to start with.
Why is it important that we look after littoral rainforests, Andrew?
It's been often regarded as a buffer zone between the tide activity, the sand, and often residential areas behind it, and it acts as a great buffer zone. So because usually there's lots of stems, there's lots of surface roots, and so it actually holds the sand and binds the sand together, and it just makes it more difficult for wave action and water to actually erode that sand surface. And so it's very, very important for inland vegetation management as well in that regard. So it offers a great buffer. Most people probably are not aware what role it plays for local animals, fauna. It's an important breeding ground for lots of birds, a lot of feeding grounds for lots of birds, particularly our migratory Teresian imperial pigeons. They utilize littoral rainforest areas quite significantly.
So what are some of the things we can do to help protect the littoral rainforest?
Well, the first thing that to improve the littoral rainforest is actually recognizing where it is. So one of the outcomes of the project I was originally involved with was looking at areas where littoral rainforest was deemed to be absent and other areas it was deemed to be present. And so getting a better understanding of where it really is actually helps particularly councils and government, so that they can actually recognize that, that is littoral rainforest. So that's actually a federally listed community, which is we can't actually undertake any development activities on anymore, or we can't have building developments in those particular areas. The average Joe on the street actually can really help in preserving and protecting littoral rainforest by really obeying any council signage that are out. So like, no beach access through here when there used to once be, for example, beach access for either people walking or for vehicles. And so every time you walk through there, you're trampling seedlings, you're nicking off parts of the plants as you're walking past because they get in your way. And if it's vehicular access, obviously they're continually churning up the sand, killing seedlings, damaging roots. And so people that visit those particular areas play a really big role in protecting littoral rainforest, and they probably don't even realize that every small impact that they make actually makes a really big impact overall. So any small modification that people make to the littoral rainforest on their way to the beach or whatever actually does matter. It makes a big impact.
So that pretty much concludes our chat today there, Andrew. I'd like to thank you for your time, mate.
No, that's fantastic, Joey. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about a really important vegetation type, and one that a lot of people are unaware of.